So right after the launch of the OnePlus Nord 2 5G, we also have the Poco F3 GT with us. And it's time yet again for that famous OnePlus Poco battle. And I know that a lot of you folks are waiting with bated breath to find out which one of these two phones should you pick up. So without wasting any time, shall we do the math? My name is Ashad, you're watching MySmartPrice, and this is our full review of the Poco F3 GT and detailed comparison against the OnePlus Nord 2 5G. But before we move on, don't forget to hit that red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it, because we're trying to get to 100k really soon and we need all your support. Let's move on. Starting with the design, the two phones offer completely different design aesthetics. While the Nord has a more conventional industrial design, the F3 GT goes for a gamer aesthetic. See, I know design is subjective, but I'd really like to meet the designer or the product engineer who thought that it was a good idea to actually scribble words, nonsensical words such as freezing and speediest on their phone. Doesn't look very premium, especially considering the fact that this phone is made of premium materials. Yes, the F3 GT has a glass sandwich design with Gorilla Glass 5 on the front and the back, which is the same as the Nord 2. But it also has an aluminum frame compared to the Nord 2 that has a plastic one. And the F3 GT has a tinier camera bump too. The other design flair that really doesn't work for me is the flash that looks like a flash. Gamers really like flashy stuff, don't they? Okay, that's too much use of flash. As for the size, the F3 GT is slightly wider and taller than the Nord 2. That's because it has a larger display too. But I feel that the F3 GT does a better job of screen to body ratio too, thanks to the comparatively smaller chin. And it has a better weight distribution compared to the Nord 2 as well. But all that doesn't matter when it comes to the in-hand feel of both the phones, because the Nord 2 does feel more holdable thanks to the higher degree of curvature on the rear glass and the smaller form factor in general. For what it is worth, the rear glass on both these phones are resistant to fingerprint smudges, and that is a huge relief. The Poco F3 GT's other advantage are the mechanical triggers for an enhanced gaming experience. More about that in my performance section. But what you need to know is that it makes the right edge very busy, and the bottom portion of the right edge does graze against your palm while holding the phone, making it mildly irritating. Now you get a Type-C port at the bottom of both the phones, and both offer only USB 2.0 speeds, and both the phones also offer dual SIM card trays at the bottom with no way to expand the memory. But the F3 GT has an advantage with its true stereo speaker setup and support for Dolby Atmos. It does sound better than the Nord 2 in the lower frequency ranges with a lot more weight to the bass. Here, listen to it for yourself. Now that's not it. The Poco F3 GT also offers high-res certification for both wired and wireless audio, and you get a Type-C dongle in the box, which means if you are an audio nerd, the F3 GT is clearly the better phone for you. Another ace up its sleeve is the IP53 dust and water resistance, which the Nord 2 doesn't offer. Now, if you ask me, I feel that the OnePlus Nord 2 has a more cohesive and more attractive design compared to the Poco F3 GT, but you cannot discount the functional advantages that the Poco F3 GT brings to the table. As for the display, the F3 GT has a larger 6.67-inch AMOLED panel with a 120Hz refresh rate compared to the smaller 6.43-inch Fluid AMOLED panel with a 90Hz refresh rate on the Nord 2. Plus, you get wideband L1 support and HDR playback from the Netflix app on the F3 GT. Last I checked, while the Nord 2 does have wideband L1, it still doesn't offer HDR playback on Netflix. Plus, the peak brightness in my standard HDR test is slightly lower on the OnePlus Nord 2. In fact, even regular brightness outdoors is slightly better on the Poco F3 GT. The other problem is the Nord 2 doesn't offer a good color tuning either. The F3 GT's settings page offers a more granular control for tweaking the colors. Plus, you can get a tuning that is close to natural on the F3 GT compared to the Nord 2, which is a huge advantage for the purists. For those who are not display nerds, this should be a total non-issue though. The F3 GT also offers a higher touch response rate of 480Hz, which is much higher than what the Nord 2 can achieve. The difference is palpable while gaming. A part of the Nord 2's display is also the in-display fingerprint scanner that is super fast to unlock, but I'm biased towards side-mounted fingerprint scanners like the one on the F3 GT. It just feels more intuitive, convenient, and fast. As for the haptic feedback, the Nord 2 has the Poco F3 GT conveniently beat. It feels more precise, tight, and generally very good. It is not like the F3 GT is bad, not even remotely, but just that the Nord 2 is better. Overall though, the Poco F3 GT has a better display compared to the OnePlus Nord 2. Easy victory for the Poco F3 GT out here. Of all the points we're comparing here, I really want to see how the 64MP camera on the F3 GT, supposedly an Omnivision OV64B sensor, compares to the Sony IMX766 when it comes to the image quality. And what you're going to see next is definitely going to surprise you. But before that, let's take a look at the rest of the camera setup. You get an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera on the two phones, and the tertiary camera on the Nord 2 is a 2 megapixel monochrome sensor. Whereas on the F3 GT, it is a macro shooter. On the front, you get an upgraded 32 megapixel primary camera compared to the 16 megapixel unit on the F3 GT. Let's get down to the comparison. Now let's start with the close-up shots. And by the way, these are non-HDR shots. And I can't really tell a difference. I really cannot. These look like photos shot by the same phone. The only difference is the F3 GT has slightly better contrast, making the outlines look better defined. Therefore, it has a slight edge here, but most people won't really care. Talking about the details, in this shot, you will notice that the F3 GT does tend to oversharpen the leaves on the tree, which is visible on close crop. The Nord 2's texture detail is more natural looking when there is no HDR processing involved, of course. Evaluating the color science in non-HDR shots was such a tough task, but I figured it out. The OnePlus Nord 2 has closer to natural colors. The F3 GT looks incredibly close to the Nord 2 in terms of color science, but the difference is the added contrast, because of which you get slightly deeper blues, greens, and reds as a result. Again, the difference is nearly negligible. By the way, did you notice that the Nord 2 has a wider field of view on the main camera? Now, anyway, moving on. When it comes to HDR shots, OnePlus's algorithm goes nuts. And I've mentioned this in the OnePlus Nord 2 review as well. In the very first shot, you can clearly see that the Nord 2 has made the image look unnatural with its heightened blues and greens. Plus, it has soft details in certain areas and over-sharpened it in certain others. And when it comes to resolving the highlights and the shadows, both are pretty decent. However, in the second shot, the Nord 2 does have a better control over the highlights, which I noticed often while testing. But yeah, the F3 GT doesn't overprocess and botch up the color science or the details, which definitely gives it an advantage. By the way, during my testing, I also noticed that Poco's Auto HDR algorithm is very iffy and doesn't fire even when the scene clearly demands it. So you might want to toggle the HDR manually if you see that some portions in your shot might get overexposed. Now the ultra-wide shots from both the phones look absolutely identical. If I showed you these pictures without telling the name of the phone, you wouldn't be able to tell these pictures were captured by two different phones. But yes, the contrast is slightly better on the F3 GT like it is in primary camera shots as well. I want to clear one lingering doubt that a lot of folks had from our previous camera comparisons. Whenever we say human subject shot or a portrait shot, presume that we've actually taken it from the rear camera, because that's generally what we do. And if we are actually taking a selfie picture or a selfie portrait, we will mention that clearly in the tag above. Now with that out of the way, you can clearly tell from these samples that the Nord 2 has a better picture here with good control over the highlights on the face and natural details. The facial tone is slightly veering towards a red color, but it is not entirely off. I'd easily pick the Nord 2 as the winner here. But yes, you see that the depth on the rear is more pronounced on the F3 GT because of the larger aperture that it has. But once again, when there is processing involved, OnePlus drops the ball. It smoothens out the detail on the face in portrait shots using the rear camera. Also, the F3 GT's edge detection is better and the depth of field effect looks pretty natural as well. When it comes to selfies, I really like what the Nord 2 can reproduce. It looks more realistic and offers natural details compared to the overtly contrasty look of the F3 GT selfie. Now, this is a look that some might prefer, but technically it is not accurate. And in HDR selfies, the F3 GT actually has a problem with creating a distinctly tone matte look with halo and color fringing around the edges of the objects in the background. You will see this problem crop up later as well. In selfie portraits, the Nord 2 clearly looks better again. It doesn't look overprocessed, which is a good thing. Moving on to low light shots. In the first sample of the scene outside, the Nord 2 and the F3 GT don't look too different except for the heightened color of the sky on the F3 GT. But with the night mode on, the F3 GT compensates by oversharpening very badly. And when it gets even darker indoors, the Nord 2 does a better job once again. The light sensitivity of the IMX766 sensor is better for sure. And the night mode performance is good too. That is also because of the presence of OIS, which eliminates any shakes to offer a crisp shot. In low light selfies, again, the Nord 2 is just better. No questions asked. Now moving on to video recording, which is the final bit of our comparison. Both the phones can do only up to 4K 30 FPS video recording, and they look very similar except for the better contrast on the F3 GT, as was the case with the image processing. The stabilization looks very similar on both. Dynamic range performance and sound recording is near identical too. Really, very little telling the two apart except for the contrast. Hey guys, now I'm shooting a 4K 30 FPS video using the Poco F3 GT and of course the OnePlus Nord 2. Do let me know in the comment section below what is that about the image quality, the image stabilization and the sound recording. As I walk and show you guys what the stabilization looks like, and I'll suddenly pan around and show you guys how it looks when you look into the sun and how the dynamic range performance is. But when it comes to recording videos with the front camera, there are some differences. Both the phones can shoot only up to 1080p 30 FPS videos. The F3 GT has an edge with image stabilization, but the Nord 2 definitely offers better environmental noise cancellation and a cleaner sound recording. So both the phones top out at 1080p 30 FPS using the front camera. Evidently they can do stabilization, which the OnePlus Nord 2 cannot. There's a special HDR mode for shooting videos in F3 GT, and it looks absolutely horrendous with a distinctly tone mapped face. Both the phones also offer a dual view video recording option thanks to the powerful processor. I think the Nord 2's wider frame helps with framing slightly better. Also, it just looks a little better generally. The F3 GT, however, has an upper hand with the creative vlog mode, which is definitely a cool option to have. So overall, the camera system on the OnePlus Nord 2 5G is better than the one on the Poco F3 GT. It's not like the Poco F3 GT has bad cameras. In fact, in many situations, you really cannot tell the difference between the two. But the Nord 2 definitely has better performance in low light thanks to the existence of OIS. And of course, the Nord 2 also has better selfie camera performance in most scenarios, which definitely gives it an edge over the Poco F3 GT. Also, if you've come this far, don't forget to hit that like button and maybe even comment below so that the YouTube algorithm can push this video to more people looking for similar comparison so that they can make a better buy decision. You should help your friends out. Now the F3 GT comes with the latest version of MIUI, which is MIUI 12.5.2. In this version, there's little to no bloatware apart from Facebook and LinkedIn, which can be deleted. Plus, you can also delete some system apps such as Notes and Calendar. But that system cleaner is still pretty annoying and cannot be uninstalled either. Nord 2 is pretty clean in terms of bloatware as well, but like I mentioned in the Nord 2 review, the code-based integration with ColorOS 11.3 causes some design inconsistencies with OxygenOS 11.3. If OnePlus is moving towards integrating ColorOS in future OnePlus phones, which by the way I feel is going to happen, the company should just move entirely instead of doing a patch job. By the way, if you haven't watched the OnePlus Nord 2 review yet, it should pop up in the I button right now. Go ahead and do that. As for MIUI 12.5, it is feature-rich, well-optimized, and the cleanest version of MIUI yet. There are no unwanted ads or notifications even. I don't see a reason why people should hate MIUI anymore. Having said that, OxygenOS 11.3 still has an edge when it comes to design and convenient optimizations, because even a simple job like changing the wallpaper continues to be a chore on MIUI. But yeah, between these two operating systems, OxygenOS just feels more polished even in its weird state of flux. Also, OnePlus has promised the Nord 2 will get 2 years of major Android upgrades, which is Android 12 and Android 13. I don't know yet how long the Poco F3 GT will be supported. The flavor of the season when it comes to mobile chips is the new MediaTek Dimensity 1200 SoC. This is the first time that OnePlus has used a MediaTek chip in its phone, and the Poco F3 GT uses the same chip. But note that you get only a maximum of 8GB of RAM on the F3 GT compared to the Nord 2, which has a 12GB variant as well. Both the phones offer UFS 3.1 storage, but in my AndroBench test, the Nord 2's memory had a slightly faster performance overall. I did a detailed performance comparison of the F3 GT's original version, Redmi K40 Gaming Edition, with the iQOO 7 and the Mi 11X, and the performance is very similar here as well. It throttles in CPU performance but is fairly stable in GPU performance compared to the OnePlus Nord 2, as you can tell from the CPU throttling test and the 3D Mark Wildlife stress test cores here. And when you compare the gaming performance, the F3 GT feels a tad bit smoother thanks to the higher refresh rate display and touch response rate. OnePlus's performance leads that it used to boast of earlier is slowly vanishing thanks to the fact that most other brands are actually catching up to OnePlus now, or even sometimes performing better. Anyway, coming to the gaming performance, considering the Poco F3 GT's gaming chops, in BGMI both the phones can achieve HDR graphics and Ultra or 40 frames per second. If you want to achieve 60 FPS, you have to switch to smooth graphics. But recently the X7 Max managed to get 90 FPS setting, so maybe there is hope for the F3 GT and the OnePlus Nord 2 and even the Reno 6 Pro for that matter. So I don't play BGMI much, so you will have to wait for somebody to test it extensively for you guys. I'd suggest that you wait for Gizmo Addict, Dhananjay Tech or Gizmo Times' video where you can actually see great gameplay performance and how the FPS performs as well. But I did play 30 minutes of Call of Duty Mobile on the two phones, and the F3 GT was definitely better when it comes to touch response and overall feel. That said, both the phones did end up touching about 41-42 degrees, which is par for the course. So in Rushil's battery test on the MySmartPrice Hindi channel, which is up on the channel, by the way, you should go and check out in the I button that pops up right now, he noticed that when he was playing Asphalt 9 for 1 hour, the Poco F3 GT definitely got warm around the metal frame because it dissipates the heat from that area, but it was cooler on the front and the back compared to the OnePlus Nord 2 5G. In fact, overall, the Nord 2 5G actually got warmer compared to the Poco F3 GT. As for the triggers, they are too close to the edge for me. I found the touch controls more responsive, to be honest. But then again, I presume it will take some time to recalibrate your twitch responses to work with the triggers. Although we must appreciate how the triggers are tucked inside the body and pop out only when you push the slider. So the long story short is the Poco F3 GT is a better phone for gaming enthusiasts. As for the network performance, both the phones are pretty good at 4G network performance with support for 4G carrier aggregation as well. But when it comes to 5G support, the OnePlus Nord 2 has an edge with support for 7 bands compared to the support for 2 bands on the Poco F3 GT. The Poco F3 GT has a larger 5060 mAh battery compared to the 4500 mAh unit on the Nord 2. This does help with a slightly better battery performance. You can expect around 6 hours and 30 minutes on the F3 GT, but the Nord 2 can only come close to 6 hours of screen on time. I also noticed that the F3 GT does last longer in general. As for the 67 watt charger that you get inside the box of the Poco phone, it takes 55 minutes to charge from 0 to 100. Poco's charging optimization definitely reduces the rate of charge in the final 10 to 20%. In comparison, the Nord 2 can charge from 0 to 100 in under 35 minutes. Charging speeds are definitely better on the Nord 2 for sure. So finally, which one of these two phones should you go for? And I think most of you guys already know the answer to this question. Is that if you play a lot of games and if you are into BGMI or Call of Duty Mobile, then it just makes a whole lot of sense to pick up the Poco F3 GT over the OnePlus Nord 2 5G. And if you are a multimedia nerd, then the high-res support and of course the great stereo speaker performance definitely comes in handy. And let's not forget the fact that you also get HDR playback in Netflix on the Poco F3 GT compared to the OnePlus Nord. But the OnePlus Nord has good design, great camera performance, and of course generally clean software going for it. So it will appeal to a wider audience base. So define your use case, figure out what you want to do with your phone before you make that purchase decision. So I hope you guys liked this comparison. It was a pretty detailed one. We worked really hard on it. So don't forget to hit that like button and of course hit that subscribe button as well. Until next time, this is Ashar from MySmartPrice signing off. Goodbye and Godspeed, my friends.